The first exercise we are going to work on is exercise 2.2 from the textbook, which asks us to compute the volume of a cylinder. So we are given as information in the exercise that we need to read the radius and the length of the cylinder from the user, and we need to compute first the area, which is the radius squared times pi, then the volume, and then display, of course, the volume on the screen. So I'm going to create a new file, a new text file, and I'm going to name it exercise 2_2.java. And keep in mind that whichever name you choose here, like exercise 2_2, has to start with an uppercase and is going to be the name of your class also inside of the file. So I created the file, I'm opening it. It's going to take a variable amount of time depending on your internet connection. There we go. This is the kwrite application, which is our source code text editor. And now I'm going to have to use somewhat of a boilerplate code to get started. Okay, so every one of the programs that we are going to use in this first chapter are going to require us to have a public class and then the name of the file. Public class exercise 2.2. I open the curly brace and close it. That means I won't forget it. So it's good programming practice. Public static void main string square brackets args. So there's a lot of syntax here, okay, that we are going to explain in detail towards the end of this course, but right now I'm going to ask you to follow this as a recipe pretty much. This entails object-oriented concept that we will be covering later on. So what matters right now is that this is the name of our class, for now our program, let's say. This means that this is where the code is going to start. So whatever I put between those curly braces is going to be what my program needs to do. So let's review a little what we need to do here. We need to read radius and length from user. That's going to be our first step. Then we compute the area. Then we compute the volume. Then we display the volume. It helps a lot to set up commands like that to organize your code before you write it. Okay. So if we need to read the radius and the length, we're going to need variables to store the radius and a variable to store the length of our cylinder. So these are double variables. This is different than from Raptor. You need here to declare variable before you are capable to use them. How am I going to read the radius and the length? Well, I'm going to do it in two different ways. Okay, the first way I'm going to use is simply using the console, so a text-based interaction with the user. How do you do this? Well, I refer you to the textbook. You need to declare a variable scanner, lowercase s, which is of type scanner uppercase s. So scanner uppercase is the name of a class. Every class in Java starts with an uppercase letter. So this means that the variable scanner can actually contain an object of class scanner uppercase s. I'm going to create this object immediately. So I'm going to initialize the variable scanner with the result of creating a new object of class scanner. And the parameter when you create an object of class scanner is pretty much where do I read from? Do I read from a file, a network connection, a text string, or something like that? Well, in this case, I'm telling the scanner that it's going to read from system.in. System uppercase S is the name of a class. System.in corresponds to pretty much your keyboard. Okay, so I have my scanner ready and I can start reading data from the user from it. So I'm going to do a system.out print and not println. Println would mean display the following string and then go to the next line. No, I'm using print and I'm going to say enter the radius and close my statement. So that the next thing I do is reading a radius and the reading will happen just right after the semicolon and the space after the word radius. How do I read something? Well, I use my scanner variable and I call a method on the object the scanner variable contains called next double. Next lowercase, double uppercase like this. And this method is going to return a value which I'm going to store inside of the radius variable. So I did the job for the radius. Let me try to do the job now for the length exactly the same way. So I'm using a cut and paste. There we go. Length. Okay, so I'm reading the variable length just the same way that I read the variable the variable radius. Now the next step is, how do I compute the area? Well, I refer you to the description of this exercise in the book. The area is the radius times itself times pi. There is a way to have the constant pi from a mathematical library from Java. For now, let's just use this approximation that we'll do in our code. How do I compute the volume? The volume is going to be equal to the area times the length. How do I display the volume? System.out.println volume is, and then I'm going to concatenate, just like I did with Raptor, concatenate to this string the content of the variable, oops, little typo here, the variable volume. And that's it, okay? So there might be some errors in there. Let's save, compile, and figure this out. So Java C, all uppercase, exercise 2_2.java. So I give the name of the file. Couple of errors, 6 errors actually from the compiler. I scroll up in my screen to find the beginning of them. Okay, this is where the error message start. There we go here. Cannot find symbol scanner, and it tells me even, hey, this is a line where I could not find it. This is a little caveat to tell you exactly where I first encountered this error. So I cannot find scanner. Scanner is not part of the Java language. Okay, scanner is part of the Java library. Every time you use something from a Java library, you need to incorporate it, you need to import it first. First line of your program. So the line to incorporate a scanner is java.util.scanner. Java means it's part of the core Java library. Util, it's a utility. Scanner is the name of the class I want to be able to use in my code. So this is code that has been written by other programmer that I'm just reusing. I'm going to save now. When you fix the first error in a debugging situation like this, you might fix in the same way 50 errors. So every time you go back, you compile, and you check the new errors because they might have changed. So this is where the first of the 4 remaining errors starts. Area cannot find symbol, variable area cannot find symbol, variable volume, etc., etc., etc. So let me go back to the source code. What happened here? Well, I declared radius and length before to use them. I didn't do such thing for area and volume. So I could go back at the top of my program and declare this variable. Java allows me also to declare the variable when I need them. So I declare a double area, assign it a value, initialize it with a value, do the same for volume, and between the moment where those variables are declared and the end of the program, I can use them freely. So I go back to my Conqueror window. I'm going to clear the screen here because it's getting a little complicated to follow. Java C to compile, no error. Java and the name of the class, not the name of the file, to run it, and the program asks me the radius. I'm going to use values that are already pre-computed, okay, 10 and 3. The result is 942.477. We are good. The program is working. Okay, go back to the source code. Now, what else can we learn from this? Well, we have been using a scanner here to read some input from the user. Okay, all this code here I'm commenting did exactly that. Read input from the user using a scanner. And then here, I used system.out.println to display my results. So I use only text console-based interaction. Well, I'm going to try to write a version of this program with the J option pane dialog boxes. So the situation is a little different. If I want to read a radius, a double value which is a radius from the user, I need first to declare a variable of type string. Let's call it radius string, okay? And this variable will contain the result of opening a J option pane, show input dialog, so opening a GUI component, a dialog box, and asking the user through this dialog box to return a value. So when you use a GUI and the dialog box, you don't get doubles directly from the user. You get instead strings that you can then convert into doubles. So the first parameter for my dialog box is null, comma, then what I want to ask the user, enter the radius, is just fine, comma. What is the title that's going to appear in the title bar of the window, the dialog box being open? Well, let's call it exercise 2.2. Okay, that's fine, comma. And then the last option is, do I want an icon? So J option pane dot question message is going to indicate that this dialog box is a question message dialog box, and therefore there's going to be a little question mark icon appearing there. So this 4-line statement is going to pretty much open a dialog box, get the user to type something, and return what the user typed as a string. I do not want a string, I want a double. So I'm going to assign to radius double.parse double, and I'm going to pass my radius string variable. So I'm asking the class double, and more specifically the method parse double from the class double, to go through that string that I just read and extract from it a double value and assign it to the variable radius. I'm going to have to do the same for, I'm doing a cut and paste for the length. Okay, so I'm just going through my code and modifying it. Length string is going to be the name of my variable. Enter the length is going to be the message I'm displaying. Whoops. Okay, Control Shift Z. Yes, there we go. Enter the length is going to be the message I'm displaying, and then of course I'm going to assign to the variable length the result of parsing the variable length string. I save. So I'm done changing the input of my program. What about the output? I'm still using here the old system with system.out .print or println. I'm going to replace that by JOption pane dot show message dialog. First parameter null, second parameter the string I want to display. Volume is, and right after that concatenated the variable, the content of the variable volume. Well, let's give it a spin. Control S to save. I go back to Conqueror. I'm going to compile first to make sure I didn't forget anything. I forgot something. 5 errors. Scroll back up. Cannot find symbol JOption pane. Okay, this is going to be easy to fix. When I use a scanner, I need to import java.util.scanner. When I use a JOption pane, I need to import javax.swing.jOption pane. I'm using a new component, software component of the Java library. I need to import it to say that I want to be able to use it in my program. Well, I had 5 errors. Let's compile again and see how many of those were fixed by this change. The 5 of them. So now our program is correct. It compiles. Okay, by correct I just mean it compiles. Java exercise 2_2. I'm going to try to run it. So once again, variable amount of time depending on your connection. There's a new window being opened right now. There we go. Dialog box. Enter the radius. I'm using the same number. That's the principle we have been using in class to test programs. When you change something, you use the same test case to make sure programs still work in the same condition. So I use 10 and 3. The result is 942.477. It's the same result. So I changed the way that my program was doing its input-output. I didn't change the semantics, the way my program is actually running. So we are done with this first exercise.